So this is my newest hidden blade kit. It's called the Wolf Blade. And you can see the way it works is it sits on my wrist. I can move my wrist around no problem without activating it, but if I spread my fingers and I pull, the blades pop out the sides. They hold together here in the middle. I can jiggle it around. Everybody's reasonably well locked, and then you can simply tap the blade and it closes back up. Now this uses a series of rubber bands to store energy internally, and so this design, as you can see, works against gravity in both directions, opening as well as closing. So like all my Hidden Blades kits, you can head over and pick one up at Shapeways if you want to build it yourself, which I'll be showing you to do right here in this video in a brief moment, or you can head over to my Etsy page and pick one up fully finished, ready to go. So these are the pieces that you receive with your Wolf Blade kit. You have a main body, you have the two halves of the blade, and then you have a little pulley, and then you have this control piece here that has the rack gearing on it. Now the first stage, like all of my kits, is you need to clear off the 3D printing dust left over from the SLS process. So you can do that with a toothbrush and a little bit of elbow grease. Make special note to clear out these little pockets that exist here in the sides of the blades. You're going to need those to be nice and clear for the future assembly steps. So the next stage is to clear out some holes that we're going to use for assembly. And what I do is I put a piece of paper clip in my Dremel. You can use a drill, or you can even use a pair of pliers if you feel like using some elbow grease, and you clear out the holes. So there's a hole that runs through each of these blade pieces right here. The next hole you can see runs through your pulley. It goes straight through the middle. You want to make sure that's nice and cleared so it spins. You have a set of two holes back here in this control piece that you want a paper clip to slide through here in the back. And then you also have two holes, one, two right in the middle, and they run all the way through into the back here. And then the last hole runs all the way through the side of this piece. You can see here. And it goes all the way through like so. Now once everything is cleared out, the next stage is to take a piece of, I'm using 220 sandpaper, and give everything just a light sanding to smooth everything out and get it ready for paint. So after all your sanding is finished, the next stage is a little bit of test assembly to make sure everything fits together and is running smoothly before we do finishing and final assembly. So the first part is to take your main body and this little control bar, and you slide them together like so. There's a bar here in the middle that this will slide over, and these two little feet will stick down through the bottom. And then all you need to do is, with this control bar all the way down, go ahead and take the two blades, make sure you get them on the correct sides with the spur gears pointing down, and set them in as high up as you can, right on these little teeth there. Set them on the teeth and then slide them into the gear system, because you want the rack all the way down and these all the way pointed up like so. And then what I've done is I've pre-bent two pins simultaneously just out of a piece of paper clip, so I can put both pins in simultaneously. This will also help keep the individual pins from drifting out, so I recommend you do this. So you can see you just jam those guys in there, you pull this guy all the way up, and you press all the way through, and you can see those stick out. I'll trim those off at final assembly. And so you can see that with this control bar all the way down, you can see subsurface, my blades are all the way up. And then you can see simply by opening up here in the middle, the bars will drive each other and it will close. And then to test it out, all you got to do is grab these two little side edges here, put your finger here in the middle and push down. They should pop out, and then you can close them back up. When you're assembling them, something to remember is that when you put your paper clips in, don't mash down here, because if you have friction on these pins, it's going to keep these two plastic pieces pushed together, and you'll get a bunch of extra, you see kind of tension on there. Whereas if you grab these two pieces and you pull them apart so that there's the natural gap, suddenly things are nice and smooth and move well. So don't mash these two front edges together really hard. It's best to give yourself, if need be, push these two apart to give yourself a little bit of room so everybody moves nice and smooth. So the next phase is down here. And it has to do with these two little holes we cleared out back here. This is where your rubber band system's going to go. So the first thing you need to do is get yourself some rubber bands. I'm using these heavy 6-ounce 1/4 of an inch orthodontic rubber bands. If you've bought my other kits, you might have some of these lying around. Otherwise, the link is in the description. So grab yourself a couple of these guys. So I'm going to grab one of these. And then what you need to do is push this guy up, you can see with your thumb, and then take a paper clip and poke it through this first hole. And then what you're going to want to do is loop one of these guys over the paper clip. Now, depending on how much force you want to put into this system is how many rubber bands you're going to put on here. What I like to do is I usually do 2, and I actually do 2 doubled over. So I actually take the rubber band, I actually fold it in half, and then I loop it over again. But it depends on your personal taste. If you want a little bit easier to activate with your wrist, you can do 1 rubber band or a handful of rubber bands that aren't doubled over, but I found good results using 2 that are doubled over, but let's do 1 doubled over just for the sake of assembly. Now, what you would normally do is cut this pin off, and then you'd leave this on. The next bit is kind of interesting. You take another piece of paper clip, and you loop it through your rubber bands like so. Now, you can see that there's 2 channels, one down here and one up here, and this has to do with whether or not you're just storing it for display or whether or not you are actually wearing it. If you want to actually wear it, what you would do is you would stretch this piece up, and drop that paper clip in this front bar here. This spring loads this thing to actually keep itself closed. And so with your rubber bands stretched between these 2 pins here, what you can see now is when you press down, these will, if you move your thumb, if you press down, this will pop open. But now the rubber bands are responsible for pulling it back. And that's with just 1 doubled over rubber band. Again, the more rubber bands you add, the more force it's going to take you to pull the actual blades out, but the harder they're going to pop back in. Now, if you want to display it, what you can do is simply reach in here, grab this little piece of paper clip, remove it, pull these guys open, and then actually stretch this rubber band down. It now is stuck open, and so that's really nice if you just want to display it. So the next stage is optional, but I highly recommend it because I think it's a cool feature. What you'll need is 2 of these 3/8 inch 1/16 of an inch length magnets. If you bought my Connor kit, you might have a couple extra ones. If not, the link is in the description. What you can do is there's these 2 little pockets in each blade, and what you can do is slide one of these magnets, as you can see, right into that edge, and you can do the same on the other side. And jam that guy in there like so. You can see they're both in there. And so now what will actually end up happening is if you attach your rubber band, when I push this out, the 2 magnets will actually find each other there in the middle. And now it's staying open all by its onesies. And this does 2 things. First, if you're doing cosplay photos or you don't feel like holding the blade out, these will keep themselves together without you having to keep pulling on the string. The second thing it does is it helps these two blades align perfectly. Sometimes, just due to the way plastic works and the way tolerancing works, the blades might want to sit a little bit low, but with these magnets in there, they really want to pull themselves together and stick and stay nice and seamless. And so those are there for that purpose. Now, obviously, in this situation, the blades aren't magically going to close up on their own. They're being held by the rubber bands. And so what you need to do is press in on the blade, just, to get some friction going, and then push sideways. And you'll see, whoop, the blades disconnect. And so that's a little feature I added in there. You don't have to do it if you just keep the string pulled back. That's what actually locks the parts out. But if you want to save yourself a little bit of wrist strain, you can add the two magnets there on the edges, and like so, everything clips together. Now you can see my magnets are sliding out, so I need to put some super glue in there to glue those suckers in. Now the last part is to do the pulley system. So I'm going to use a little bit of 0.5 millimeter diameter clear fishing line. What you need to do is take the end of this and run it right down the center of this control piece. There's a hole that runs right down the middle. Then I'm gonna fish it out of here, in here in the middle, and then do it again and pull it out this back piece. Now then, next thing I do is I drop in my pulley. It drops here in the back. And then using a paper clip and some pliers, I'm going to line this up and drive the axle through both pieces. And then clip this guy off. There. Then, taking this end, I'm going to loop it behind the pulley, so the rope is going over it, and then press it back through, pull it through like that, and then, excuse me, blade, go ahead and loop this back in so I can get it here in the middle. A little bit of tangling, but pull that guy through. So now it's going through the, now it's going through the front, looping around and coming back. And now all you need to do is tie it to this back bar right here. So all I do is, let's come at it from the other side, boop, reach between my rubber bands, pull this sucker through, and then all I gotta do is tie a nice tight series of knots to hold this in place. Nice and tight, because this stuff might like to slip, and then trim off your excess and then pull back here in the front. And so now you can see the point of this pulley. By pulling forward here, the rope actually goes around and is actually pulling this control bar in. So with that, everything's all assembled, all your paper clips are in and good to go, and your magnets. And so now when you pull on your fishing line, the item will pop out, and it will pop out as fast as you feel like pulling on that string, as hard as you want to wrench on your own wrist. And then to close it up, all you got to do is tap the blades apart, and they will close via that rubber band system you have here in the back. And again, you can adjust that to whatever strength you want for your wrist and your closure. But that is that. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fully disassemble everything else, and we'll finish this guy up, and then we'll be ready to mount it on a wrist and have some fun. With everything disassembled, we can now finish everything up. I'm going to use some more foil tape on these parts. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm basically going to foil tape this entire top. I'm going to trim away the parts that need to be black, and then I will do the foil taping on these blades, both sides. So with everything foil taped, the next stage is to take a little bit of black acrylic paint, slightly watered down, and then just wash everything with black, and that will complete the finishing. Alright, so everything is painted and dried, and I've reassembled everything. So it all works just the way we saw when it was the test assembly. And then one of the last things you should do is take a teeny tiny piece of foam. I'm using a piece of EVA foam, and just attach that right on the back here. This is just for comfort and to help the mechanism not pinch or ride up against your skin. I've went ahead and strapped this to my wrist. I just used some Velcro straps I made, but you can use whatever matches your costume, whatever you can source or find. I've mounted it so that I can move my wrist without hitting this mechanism down and causing it to pop. That's just for range of motion. And if you look carefully, I'm using a slightly different system for safety on this one. You're going to need a little bit more force to pull on this cable than you would normally use on my older kits. So what I've done is I've actually run the cable up through this center ring and then into this thumb ring, and I've sized it so that when I pull my hand back and keep my thumb next to my palm, it's not activating the blade. And that's your safety, so you can move your hand around. As long as you keep your thumb next to your hand, you don't have to worry about anything moving. However, by moving my hand forward, opening my thumb up, I pull all of this slack out. And now when I raise my arm backwards, it opens. And so that's the safety system. Basically, if you either completely remove this from your thumb and transplant this onto your other finger, obviously you don't have to worry about anything, or just generally you can keep this on your thumb and you can still get pretty good range of motion. Now the way this works, as you saw earlier, is you simply pull this thing back and the blade will pop open, and then to close it, what you need to do is you need to basically put your fingertip on one of these two blades. I recommend this back one here, and then just push sideways. And that's what actually will separate the magnets and cause this thing to close. Now again, if you leave those magnets out, this isn't going to stay open unless you keep your hand pulled back. And if you really want to lock this and like wave it around and go crazy with it, go ahead and keep your wrist pulled back and keep tension on this line. Otherwise, when you jiggle around, as you see, you might cause the magnets to decouple, and then it will close on its own, which is a feature in the sense that if you really feel like you don't want to knock it over with your hands, you can jiggle hard enough, kind of like they do in the game where they kind of jiggle